Authoritarianism by Design, America's Blueprint to Mute the Marginalized is a historical fiction novel dedicated to all who continue to advocate for equity, dignity, and the possibility of a better future. Moreover, it is a documentary about what is happening in America today and in your backyard. This latest book is a fictional yet deeply resonant exploration of these themes, rooted in statistical evidence and lived experiences. Is free speech really free? Right, free speech. It's that thing Americans absolutely love to talk about, isn't it? We wave it around like a tiny flag on the 4th of July, usually while arguing about something incredibly daft on the internet. We're told it's the bedrock of democracy, the cornerstone of liberty, the absolute foundation upon which this great, slightly chaotic nation was built. And yes, in theory it sounds fantastic. The idea that anyone can say anything anytime without fear of the government kicking down their door, brilliant. It's the kind of ideal you'd put on a motivational poster, probably with a soaring eagle in the background. But, and this is a rather large but one that could comfortably seat a family of 4, is it truly as simple or as universally applied as we like to pretend it is? The truth, as it so often is a bit more complicated, a bit messier, like trying to eat a particularly overfilled taco without making an absolute fool of yourself. Because while the First Amendment is there, in black and white, a lovely little sentence protecting us from governmental overreach, the of free speech, the actual day-to-day reality of it, often feels like navigating a minefield designed by someone with a truly twisted sense of humor. For many, freedom of speech comes with a long list of unspoken terms and conditions, hidden fees, and the very real threat of consequences that, while not always governmental, can be just as life-altering. It's less a sacred, inviolable right and more like a conditional offer, subject to change based on who you are, what you say, and who you happen to be saying it to, which isn't quite as catchy for a national slogan, is it? Think about it. The very concept of free implies an absence of cost, an absence of barriers. Yet across this vast and varied nation, countless individuals find that exercising their supposed right to speak freely incurs a hefty price. This isn't always a fine or imprisonment, though those certainly exist for some. More often it's the loss of a job, social ostracization, online harassment campaigns that make your grandma's chain emails look like a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigation, or simply being drowned out by louder, more powerful voices who have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. It's a subtle, insidious chipping away at a foundational principle, making it less a universal guarantee and more a luxury item. So, when we champion free speech, we need to ask ourselves, free for whom, and at what cost? Is it genuinely the marketplace of ideas we envision, where the best thoughts rise to the top through reasoned debate? Or is it more like a very exclusive, very expensive club where only certain members get to speak without interruption, while others are handed a gag and politely, or not so politely, shown the door? The glossy brochure version of American free speech is wonderful truly, but it's time we took a much harder look at the often grim reality for so many who dare to open their mouths and speak their truth, especially when that truth is inconvenient. Let's be brutally honest, the experience of free speech in America isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. Not even close. For some, particularly those in positions of established power and privilege, often from historically dominant white communities, speaking their mind, even offensively, might result in a book deal or a primetime television slot. Their platforms are vast, their microphones are loud, and the consequences for controversial statements can often be surprisingly minimal, sometimes even beneficial. They can, in essence, shout from the rooftops with a certain built-in immunity, a societal Teflon coating that deflects much of the criticism that would cripple others. This isn't to say they face backlash, but the scale and impact are often demonstrably different, isn't it? Now contrast that with the experience of black communities. For centuries, their fight for basic human rights has been inextricably linked to the fight for free speech. From enslaved people daring to share forbidden knowledge, to civil rights activists facing down fire hoses and police dogs simply for demanding equality, their voices have been systematically suppressed, criminalized, and violently silenced. Even today, peaceful protests against police brutality are often met with disproportionate force, and black activists find themselves labeled as radical or dangerous for articulating grievances that are, frankly, centuries overdue for a proper hearing. The message is clear. your speech is welcome, as long as it doesn't make us too uncomfortable or challenge the existing power structures too profoundly. Then you have brown communities including Latinx and Asian American Pacific Islander groups, and immigrant families, navigating a complex web of linguistic barriers, cultural misunderstandings, and often a palpable fear of drawing unwanted attention from authorities. For many immigrants, especially those undocumented or with precarious visa statuses, speaking out against exploitation in the workplace or discriminatory practices can carry the terrifying risk of deportation, of having their families torn apart. Their free speech is often self-censored, a survival mechanism in a system that can feel designed to keep them quiet and compliant. The American dream doesn't often include a clause about what happens if you complain too loudly about the working conditions of the people actually building it. And let's not forget other marginalized groups, the LGBTQ+ community, fighting for their narratives to be heard and respected amidst waves of discriminatory legislation, disabled individuals advocating for accessibility and an end to systemic ableism, or religious minorities whose practices and expressions are sometimes met with suspicion and hostility. For these groups, exercising free speech is not just about expressing an opinion, it's about asserting their very existence, their humanity, their right to take up space in a society that frequently tries to push them to the margins. The freedom in their speech is hard-won, constantly defended, and always under threat from those who prefer a more homogeneous, less challenging public square. It's not just a vague feeling that some voices are more equal than others, there's actual quantifiable data to back this up, which is always fun, isn't it? Look at studies on media representation, for instance. Year after year they show a significant overrepresentation of certain demographics in newsrooms and as sources, while others remain woefully underrepresented. This isn't an accident. It means that the stories being told, the perspectives being amplified are often filtered through a very specific lens, shaping public discourse in ways that benefit those already in control. If your community isn't in the room where the news is made, how likely is it that your full truth will make it to the front page, or even the back page for that matter? Consider the real-life example of whistleblowers in corporate or governmental settings. These are individuals who, often at great personal risk, choose to speak out against corruption, waste, or illegal activities. The official narrative is that they are heroes, champions of transparency. Yet, statistics from organizations that support whistleblowers paint a grim picture. Retaliation is rampant. Many face job loss, character assassination campaigns, crippling legal fees, and profound psychological distress. The freedom to expose wrongdoing is technically there, enshrined in various laws, but the practical reality is a gauntlet of suffering designed to discourage anyone else from getting similar bright ideas. It's a stark warning: speak up and you might just lose everything. Then there's the digital sphere, once hailed as the great democratizer of speech. And yes, it has given a platform to many previously voiceless individuals. But it has also become a breeding ground for sophisticated silencing tactics. Think of coordinated online harassment campaigns, often targeting women and minorities with vitriolic abuse, doxing, and threats. Reports from organizations like the Pew Research Center highlight the disproportionate impact of such harassment, leading many to self-censor or withdraw from online discussions entirely. The goal isn't to debate, it's to intimidate, to overwhelm, to make the space so toxic that dissenting voices simply give up. It's the digital equivalent of a mob shouting someone down, only far more scalable and often anonymous. And what about the chilling effect of surveillance? Knowing that your emails, your calls, your online activities might be monitored can subtly or not so subtly alter what you feel comfortable saying, even in private, let alone in public. Immigrant communities in particular report heightened fear due to increased surveillance and data collection, leading to a reluctance to engage in advocacy or even access essential services. This isn't a direct gag, no, but it's a pervasive atmosphere of caution that stifles open expression. The land of the free starts to feel a bit like the land of better watch what you say, which again doesn't have the same ring to it. So, who are these shadowy figures, these power dynamics pulling the levers to mute certain voices? Well, it's not always a cackling villain in a secret lair, though that would be dramatically simpler. Often it's systemic. It's entrenched economic interests trying to prevent scrutiny of exploitative labor practices or environmental damage. It's political machinery that benefits from a misinformed or apathetic electorate, and therefore works to discredit or silence critical journalists and activists. It's cultural inertia, the discomfort of privileged groups when confronted with the realities of inequality, leading to defensiveness and the dismissal of legitimate grievances as too aggressive or divisive. It's the quiet, pervasive influence of big money in media and politics, ensuring some narratives are amplified while others are conveniently lost in the static. These power dynamics rely on the idea that free speech is a privilege to be earned, or worse, a commodity to be bought by the highest bidder. They thrive when we forget that the ability to speak truth to power, to question, to dissent, to simply share one's lived experience is not something granted by the powerful. It is inherent. It is a birthright. It doesn't matter if you're a fourth-generation CEO or a newly arrived refugee, a tenured professor or a high school student organizing a walkout. Your voice has intrinsic value, and your right to express it, within the bounds of not inciting violence or hatred, should be sacrosanct. The powerful don't get to decide whose speech is acceptable or convenient. The fight to protect and expand true freedom of speech requires constant vigilance and active participation. It means supporting independent media that isn't beholden to corporate interests. It means creating and defending spaces, both online and offline, where marginalized voices can be heard safely and without fear of retribution. It means challenging attempts to legislate away protest rights or to normalize the harassment of those who speak out. It means teaching critical media literacy so people can discern propaganda from genuine discourse. It means fundamentally standing in solidarity with those whose voices are being suppressed, because an attack on one person's right to speak is, ultimately, an attack on everyone's. Therefore, let's be clear, freedom of speech isn't just some dusty old clause in a historical document. It's a living, breathing necessity for a just and equitable society. It is the tool through which we hold power accountable, advocate for change, and build understanding across our differences. It is not a gift from the government or a perk for the well-behaved. It is our birthright. And like any precious right, if we don't continuously fight for it, for everyone, not just for ourselves or those who agree with us, we risk waking up one day to find it has been silently, carefully, and authoritatively designed right out of existence, and that's a future no one should want. For more information or books, visit MikeTheAuthor.com.